Good evening, ladies. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Lavington Tickets. Our discussion today is on the post-budget discussion. We had a discussion on the pre-budget and the state of economy about 2 weeks ago. And we'd just like to welcome everyone. And before we start, we'd like to start with a word of prayer. Brian Nyakundi, if you can hear me, Brian Nyakundi, please pray with us as we begin.
Okay. Okay, let's pray. You're getting me?
Yes, we can get you. Please pray.
Okay, let's pray. Our Father in heaven, we bless your name once again this day. We thank you for your protection. We thank you for allowing us to meet here today. As we discuss, may you be with us and may you guide us through the session, for we pray and trust in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Brian.
Welcome.
Today we are discussing the budget that was read a few days ago, probably less than a week following the finance bill that was tabled sometime in May. Now, the government budget purely is just to anticipate revenues, which are taxes, duty, fees, and others, against the proposed spending for the coming financial year, which is 2020-2021. And through this budget, the government will implement economic policies and realize its program priorities. Now, today we have a panel of 3 experts, and we hope to gain insights on how an individual or a business can benefit themselves by using the government. Like, where would they spend their money? Where should they pour in their resources? And in terms of debt, should they borrow or not borrow? Basically, to get a direction. Now, an effective way to describe the budget to a 2-year-old is by using a room. Like, a well-organized room will help you locate your possessions and items generally. But if your room is mixed up or neglected, then clutter accumulates and you're not able to know your left from right, or not able to get what you need when you need it. Now, I'll just start by introducing our first panelist, Bitange Demo. He's a professor of entrepreneurship at the University of Nairobi School of Business. His research centers on the link between ICTs and small medium enterprises, with emphasis on how ICTs influence economic development in Africa. Prof is the chairman of the Kenya's Distributed Ledgers and Artificial Intelligence Task Force that will develop a roadmap for the country's digital transformation. And you realize that our topic is not only the post-discussion budget, but also the digital economy, which Prof will highlight. Now, he's also an advisor and board member of several organizations, including Safaricom, one of the leading telecommunications companies in Africa, M-Pesa Foundation, Research ICT Africa, that is based in South Africa. And besides that, he is an open data, big data evangelist and dedicated to simplification, which is visualization of data for ordinary citizens to consume. Our next panelist is Winnie Wanja. Sorry, apologies. Prof, if you are here with us, please just say hi. Okay, I think Prof is not here with us, yes, but I think Alden will get. Now, our next panelist is Winnie Karanu Wanjiku. Winnie is an all-country plan program manager at Microsoft and an advisory board member at AidHub and the regional voice of the Lead Act of Impact 2030. She's a business development program management professional with over 10 years experience in corporate and social responsibility and volunteer and leadership development programs. She's an artificial intelligence county plan manager for Microsoft Middle East Africa. She works with leadership teams across the company to develop strategies for Microsoft to create an enabling environment for digital transformation of critical industries in key markets in Middle East Africa. Winnie, if you could hear us, please just say hi.
Hi, everyone. Looking forward to a great discussion.
Thank you so much, Winnie, and we're glad to have you on board. Now, Mukami is our next presenter. And Mukami, Christine Mwanja, is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and a tax advisor, and a student at the University of Cape Town, Master's Laws, LLM, Commercial and Tax Laws. Mukami Mwanja, if you could hear us, please say hi.
Hi, it's good to be here with you.
Now, Christine also has a vast experience in tax field, generally within Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania, and also South African tax law. And she has over 7 years experience in the tax field. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us. Now, our moderator for tonight is Keldin Owande. Keldin Owande, if you could hear me, please say hi.
A very good evening, all of us, and welcome to today's webinar. And we hope we will derive value at the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Keldin. Now, before I hand over to Keldin, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to ask your questions on the chat box, and we will have a Q&A session about 20 minutes in between the discussion, just to answer your questions and any clarifications on what the speakers would have, the panelists would have told us or have shed light on. We also want to remind you that we have a post-event link that we will share at the end of the webinar, just so that you can help us know which areas you would like us to focus on and which areas you'd like us to talk about in future. On to you, Keldin.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Beryl, for such a warm welcome. And I want to welcome all of us to this webinar. Prof will be joining us shortly. He's finalizing another webinar. So he'll be joining us on the course of this webinar. So once again, welcome to our panelists. Our discussion today is a post-budget discussion and also focusing on the digital economy. And all of us are aware that the budget was read last week. And ours here today is just to see how we come in and what is in there for us, so that then we know how we ought to carry out ourselves. If you have noticed, also we have included digital economy, not only because the digital economy is part of the budget or what have been affected by the budget, but also just an emphasis on the fact that digital era is here with us and technology is becoming part and parcel of us. And if we are to compete as businesses, as individuals, as a country, or even as a continent globally, then we must have technology as part and parcel of our operations. So that's why we are having this. I was just reading somewhere on Monday that Facebook right now, through technology, is introducing what I would call a Facebook M-Pesa through WhatsApp. And so we will be able to send money for free through WhatsApp. And these are some of the disruptions that are coming with technology, and that's why we have to talk about them. So then, without much ado, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to go straight to the business of the day. And I just want to invite Christine to take us through briefly on the budget highlights before we can delve into the discussion. The budget highlights touching on mostly the sources of revenue as well as recurrent and development expenditures. And then after that, we will delve into the study. Welcome, Christine.
Okay, thank you. So how I'll go about this is that I will just briefly mention just what you said, the main, like a general view of what the budget looks like. What I've tried to do is to compare at the last 3 years. So what I've done a bit of a tracking between from the year, the 18-19 financial year, the 19-20 and the 2021. I've done just a brief analysis of what was in each year so that we can get maybe a perspective of how is 2020 and how is 2021 looking like, at least in the eyes of the government. And just a few quick facts about, like, when you compare the 3 years, is that there's really in the financial year 18-19, the budget stood at 2.5 trillion, 2.6 thereabout. In the next year, it increased and to 2.8 trillion, and then this year compared to last year is on the same footing, which is about 2.8 trillion. So it just looks pretty much like in the eyes of the government, really things stand almost on equal, at least the spending that they anticipate stands on equal footing as last year, the 19-20 year. And other things that are a bit noticeable from the budget is on, like, the major sources of the revenue to fund the the approximate 2.8 trillion budget. Tax comes in like the biggest source, and a little bit from grants, and there's quite a deficit as well. So on the taxes, the big contributor to the revenue is going to be income tax. And this is despite the fact that the income tax, for at least the corporate tax has been reduced from 30% to 25%. You see, like, the difference between, especially between last year and this year is very small. It's a 5% decrease in the income tax expectation. So again, maybe someone will just stop and ask, really, like, with the corporate tax going down by 5%, we see like almost like a 5% decline in the revenue that they expect. And to note also is that income tax is not just corporate tax, but also individual income taxes. So like the pay as you earn. And also a thing that is notable is that from the revenue sources is that the VAT, the value added tax contribution for the year 2021, the projection at least from the VAT side is higher than it was in the year 1920 and 18-19. That's quite a bit, you feel like you need to make a comment on that, because the VAT rate has been decreased from 16% to 14%. Yet, despite the fact that there is a decrease of that 2%, they expect to collect a high revenue from VAT this year than they have in the last 2 years. That's worthy of comment, at least. But the other thing that maybe I'll quickly highlight on that is that, well, the VAT rate has been decreased from 16% to 14%. There's been quite a bit of clawbacks of VAT exemptions that businesses were enjoying. So it's quite a bit. I think when you compare the exemptions that have been clawed back to the difference from 16% to 14%, it shows how significant the businesses would be affected, the ones that have lost the exemptions that were given to them. For instance, something like, anyway, this is just going to be quite a bit of a technical highlight, but it's something like the group restructurings now will be subject to VAT, something like some exemptions that were given to like development of certain parks. Those have been clawed back. So you see the revenue projection on VAT is quite noticeable because it goes up by 2% compared to the last 2 years. And the other sources of revenue still remain pretty much on the same footing as the other 2 years. So again, I mean, despite the COVID situation, I mean, the government seems to still anticipate quite a bit of, quite a good revenue collection. That still remains to be seen. And the recurrent versus development expenditure still stands, the recurrent expenditure stands at 1.25 trillion compared to 633 billion. And this is slightly, the development expenditure is slightly lower in this financial year 2020 and 2021. It's a bit lower compared to the last 2 years on the development expenditure, but of interest is that the recurrent expenditure is higher is going to be higher in this year compared to the last 2 years. So maybe again, it's maybe a priority. I mean, it's maybe something that could be said about what the government is focusing on. And on the sector allocations, so the main sectors that have highlighted are infrastructure. I could project, maybe share my screen so that, but it's okay. Let me just mention them. But when presented on a graph, what you actually what you should.
Sorry, you can actually present if you have it ready.
I can. Okay. 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 Share screen. Okay. I'm not sure if you can see it. I've shared it, but anyway, let me just mention on the sectors, like the sectors that, again, something that is of note is that the education sector in the last education sector normally receives quite a bit of an allocation when it comes to the budget allocations, the government spending. Quite a significant amount goes to education, so much so that in like this year, the allocation that goes to education is around 440 billion, and that has been the government expenditure on education has consistently been quite significant. Even in the last year, it was actually around the same, over 400 billion. And of note is that, I mean, to my mind, this was quite interesting because, especially this time when the education sector is quite affected by the schools being closed and that much, it's quite of interest that such a significant amount still goes to education. And the other sector that I thought, now that we are discussing about digital tax, is on the ICT sector. I mean, it receives, the ICT sector has been receiving quite a bit of focus. Like last year, that's when the Ajira digital program was being, the government was paying quite a bit of attention there, and speaking about establishing a fund that it can equip the youth to develop their digital skills. And the spending around that is still, I mean, it's not as high, it's just close to 15 billion. But when you think about it, because there's like the amount that's allocated like to the Ajira project, which is supposed to equip the youth, I think quite a bit can be done on the funds allocated to that, but it's not, I mean, you can't compare to the other allocations that are given, and still infrastructure is quite, infrastructure that's roads and the trains and energy, the energy sector, that also, in fact, that comes second after education, the education sector. So that now the infrastructure sector is quite, government looks, it's keen on that, but you notice that it's these are the big four agenda items for the government. So again, that, and the manufacturing sector is not a happy sector this time, at least in the budget allocation right now. And also a thing to note is quite a number of taxes have been clawed back from the manufacturing sector, especially I mean tax exemptions, like for instance, like the electricity rebate that was given to the manufacturing sector, that is going to be done away with. It's at least proposed to be done away with. It was actually done in the Tax Law Amendments Act, and so it's quite. My comment on this, on the budget, is that it looks like the government seems to be quite optimistic on either optimistic or it's just trying to maintain business as usual, so that now it almost looks like the budget for the last financial year and this financial year seems to be almost on equal footing. If you even look at the spending, it's estimated at 2.8 trillion. That's the exact amount that was estimated, was budgeted for last year at 2.8 trillion. So it looks like quite the government is really still maintaining its estimates as per last year. And also the other thing to mention is that there's a thing that the government highlighted is the 8-point stimulus package. And this is what, I mean, this is like what would be the government's plan on helping to caution the economy against the COVID-19 situation. And of interest is that the two main, the points revolve around road and infrastructure, education outcome, health outcome. The thing that also seems to be quite going to speak to the economies, like the tourism recovery. They're trying to build on that. And also there's the environment and food security. Food security actually is also a big spending item. And this is especially after the flood, after the locust invasion. So basically that's a very general idea of what the budget is about. But I mean, it's a really general overview of what you can say is the budget statement for this year. So
Thank you, Christine. Thank you for painting that picture. Indeed, there's so much in the budget, and thank you for trying to summarize what is there. And maybe just from what you've shared with us, I just want to go to Winnie. Winnie, from the budget as was read and from the summary Christine has given, what to you was business as usual, and what surprised you from the reading of the budget? What can you share on those two?
There are a couple of things I think surprised me. One, I think what Christine just mentioned in terms of the investments in ICT. I think currently, if you look at how COVID has affected the economy and how the opportunities opening up in digital, in terms of even the government being forced to work remotely, the aspect of being able to access different services either online or being able to transact as well online. So a lot of that investment, I'm not seeing it within government. So if you look at the ICT budget specifically, it's mostly on infrastructure, conversations, but not necessarily on solutions where the government can really take advantage of also the opportunities that are there. I think also something that I was very encouraged by, I think given the disruption, the pay cuts and everything, there has been an intentional investment in ensuring that young people still have jobs in some way. And so I think in every sector, I've seen that from ICT to healthcare, tourism, education, roads and infrastructure, they have a percentage of budget that is allocated to either interns or youth in some way. I think I counted, I think it was around 121,500 jobs, which is quite significant. And then also, there's also some additional investments in like the existing youth funds and Women Fund, NYS. So I think they are really keen on ensuring that young people still continue to be engaged in the economy, and irrespective of the disruptions that are happening, especially now a lot of people have lost jobs, or at least have either had to take pay cuts. And so really being considerate of that. And so really looking at whatever investments that they're making in any of the sectors, that they include an aspect of youth engagement in that. I think also what I would say encouraged, but also at the same time, I don't know what it is. I think Christina kind of mentioned it. Is it like, are they optimistic or delusional? I think it's an interesting balance there. And so, what is the right balance of, continuing to want to make sure that everything happens as it had been planned, for example, the Big Four agenda, versus all this like the stimulus packages and ensuring that there's a recovery of the economy. So I think really ambitious, I think I would say, in terms of how things are in respect, like I think Christine mentioned in terms of the dependency on income tax, that they have reduced the rates, yet people have lost jobs. So you kind of try to understand how are they planning to do it. I think we'll also go into a bit more detail about the digital tax, but I think them seeing the opportunity there, I think is something that they are being incentivized to kind of take advantage of, in as much as they're not necessarily really kind of being clear in terms of what exactly that will look like. So I think those are the things I would say.
Thank you for that. And just from where you've stopped, whether or not the government is being optimistic or ambitious, I just want to invite Prof. Prof is here with us, and I just want to ask Prof, with a budget of approximately 2.9 trillion last year, the economy was set to grow at about 6.1%, but now the actual growth is estimated to be slightly above 2%. And similarly, our economy was already struggling pre-COVID. And then we had, of course, the locusts, the floods, and now COVID-19. However, the budget for this year, for the next financial year, FY21, is set to be at about 2.8 trillion, with a corresponding growth in economy of about 5.8%. So is this a case of optimism, or are we being overambitious, Prof? Prof, can you hear us, Prof?
Sorry, this thing mute and mute. Yeah. Yes.
That's technology. Welcome.
Yeah. Thanks for the wonderful session that we are having. But I was saying that nobody knows, not one person in the whole world knows how long COVID is going to be around. If it goes on for another 1 year, that 5 point whatever you are saying is just a dream. You can't get to it because health would take priority. And number two is that whether they reduced the taxes to zero for companies, they will not be making money so they will not pay. So you actually have to make money. They have already been disrupted. They removed the taxes from the people who pay tax. Those who earn below 30,000, actually they are the majority. They are the ones who pay tax in this country. I don't see where the government is going to get the money from. Even oil, where they get money from, is going downwards to zero. So there is sort of ambition and prayer that God stops this thing so that things can come to normalcy. But what you ought to fear is the fact that if they can't raise taxes, they will borrow locally.
Oh yeah.
If they borrowed locally, the business will not borrow because nobody will take the risk of giving money to the business when they can earn it from government. And that is something that we have never quite balanced. How can we lower local borrowing so that the money goes to the businesses? And then number three thing, which is very big, is social protection, which has never been there. The government cannot leave people to die if this crisis continues. Everybody is talking about social protection. Where are we going to get money from to feed, especially those in shanties because they have no farm to farm? So there is a lot of uncertainty. There is a lot of problems, and I don't see us going to any development project. I think that money will be pulled out of there and moved to other areas. We must begin to pray that God be with us, that somehow we find a solution to COVID. It has cost not just Kenya, it has cost everybody. Then the last thing I want to say is the investments in education is good, but people are misunderstanding. The Kenya government did something very good with respect to moving towards what we call competence-based curriculum. The competence-based curriculum was meant to lower the costs because that system is changing from the industrial period type of education that we have had for many years. If I can simplify that, is that the reason why we put classes that we will take students standard 1, 2, 3, then they get standard 8, and then they move on to university and stuff, was to lower the cost so that everybody can afford. But the technology now has enabled us to actually afford by customizing education. The trouble is that the teachers themselves don't understand that paradigm shift. Everybody must understand it. At the university, we started so well in online teaching until it got somewhere and the people started to refuse the system. It worked well for mostly graduate students and higher, but it hasn't quite worked with undergraduates, but it must work. What we are talking about, the shift to fourth industrial revolution, is where that we can be self-motivated to go online and self-educate, and then leverage on some advanced technology that you are able to learn more by yourself. You learn more by yourself.
It's Target who's pushing forward to.
Somebody watching football. Okay.
Prof, you're on mute.
This one I was muted. Someone didn't like me. but that's okay.
Sorry about that, Prof. You can
Yeah.
proceed.
What technology means is that, and this is going to be even those who are working, that we must embrace a concept called lifelong learning, meaning that you yourself take yourself online and learn something new, because even the jobs are changing to the future jobs. And so it is concepts that we must begin to accept, not because of anything, but because the whole world is changing. And even the budget should be aligned that way. But you would find that some people didn't quite understand how to align this, or for fear that the unions would fight the new changes that we are going to see.
Thank you for that, Prof. And especially in emphasizing the place of technology. And those of us who are listening, we are trying to emphasize the place of technology, and we are going to mingle the discussion with that. For those of us who are watching from YouTube, you can as well also type your question on the live chat, and the same will be gathered with the ones on Zoom. So thank you for emphasizing on technology, Prof. I just want to bring to our attention, and Christine will weigh in on this, that we are moving towards dependence on technology, yet in an attempt to raise more revenue, the government has introduced what we call the digital service tax at about 1.5% of gross transaction value. So it is a proposal in the finance bill, but even before its introduction earlier in April through Tax Laws Amendment Act, there was introduced withholding tax on online promotions and marketing services. So Christine, how are these going to work, and what is the motive of the government in introducing this, and why now? Maybe weigh in on that before we can now come and delve deep into the discussion of the government and technology. Christine?
Okay, yeah, let me say something about that. Yeah, you're indeed right that there are a couple of taxes that were introduced that have to do with digital tax. There's what is proposed right now in the Finance Bill 2020, which is the digital services tax, which says at 1.5% of the gross transaction value. And how the government proposes to do this is that whenever a person is paying for a digital service that you've collected, a digital service that you have received, the government says that when you're paying the person who provided you that service, you're supposed to deduct 1.5% of tax and of the gross transaction value and pay that over to them. And a thing about that is that they are trying, and you can understand, so I have to say two things. You can understand why the government is keen on doing that, but also you see the disadvantage of doing that. The reason why the government is keen on doing that is that there's a lot of work going on, as Prof has said, on the digital platforms. There's a lot of revenue going in through the digital platforms. For instance, you can look at what you said, like the promotional taxes, is that the revenue that would have gone, let's say, to Citizen TV for someone advertising on Citizen is now going to YouTube for someone who is advertising on YouTube. And there's a generation right now that if you're trying to market your brand to them, it's more effective if you market it on Twitter or on YouTube or on LinkedIn than it is to market on national television or on a newspaper. So you can understand why the government is keen to tax that, because there's an erosion of the tax base, and there's someone who's receiving this income, which is these digital platforms, and they're not paying. There's not enough tax that's being collected from it. So you can understand there's an aspect of that the government is right indeed in trying to tax that, because it's a huge erosion of the tax base. in Kenya. But on the other hand, is what also you and a thing to say is that the promotional tax is targeted on non-residents. That if you're paying to a non-resident person, you're supposed to deduct tax on it. But then the digital and the thing also to mention is that there's also the digital tax. There's the digital tax, the promotional tax, and the digital services tax. The digital tax, which was in the Finance Act 2019, but it hasn't been effected yet because there are no regulation on how that needs to be done. The digital tax is basically what the government is saying is that if you interact with buyers and sellers on an online platform, they want to tax that. They want to apply tax on that. So for instance, if I'm a small business that's marketing on Twitter and I've put my products there, the question is, because I'm interacting with buyers on the platform, how is that going to be taxed, and how is that going to be done? But that's one of the taxes that the government was passed in the Finance Act 2019, and that there are pending regulations on how that's going to be done. And now, in addition to that, now there's the digital services tax, which is proposed in the finance bill, and there's the promotional, let's just say the advertising, marketing, and promotional tax. That whenever you're paying that you're paying that to a non-resident person, you're supposed to withhold tax on it. So there's all these things that the government is trying to run and catch up with the tax that they can get from the digital economy. And you can understand why that's the case, because there's a lot of revenue that's being lost in taxes on that. But then also, it somewhat will affect also someone who is like promoting their products. Let's say you want to promote your products on Facebook. So regulations haven't been issued yet on how that needs to be done, but there's a part of that that could also be subject to tax. So then there's also a concern like, does that motivate someone to be innovative? Like if I come up with a digital platform to share, like a sort of like a Kenya domestic social media site, like am I going to be affected? So I think the regulations, a fair point to make is that regulations haven't been issued yet, especially on the digital tax, which would also affect the locals, the residents, so that now you know how much you're going to be affected. But the government really needs to think through that, especially now that a lot is going to be done on the digital platforms. And it's also good to note that Kenya is not the only country in Africa that is applying that kind of tax. South Africa introduced that tax in 2014, and they have been charging VAT on electronic services. A country like Nigeria is proposing to introduce it. Uganda is proposing to introduce it. Angola. So African countries are also, Kenya is not the only country doing it. And yeah, that's the reason. The reason what I've said is that a lot of revenue is slipping right through the hands of government right now, and it is affecting local businesses, like, you know, like the people who would earn the promotional income right now are not earning it. Income is going to LinkedIn or YouTube or TikTok. It's really not, and they're trying to. So that's really the concern here. Yeah.
Thanks for that, Christine. I think what I'm getting from you is that it's justifiable that Facebook is getting income from Kenya, but they're not paying their fair share of tax. And so it's just fair. But I just want to bring Winnie on this discussion of digital taxation. Winnie, Kenya is ranked 4th in Africa in the number of technology hubs. This is according to Forbes magazine, after Nigeria, South Africa, and Egypt. From a technology, business, and digital economy perspective, what will be the likely impact of the introduction of these new taxes targeting the digital businesses? And how will this position Kenya as a technological hub in Africa? So I want you to just weigh in on this, and then Prof also will weigh in on the same. Winnie?
Sure. I think, of course, the effect will, and as Christina has rightly said, it's not something that is happening in isolation to Kenya only. It's happening across the globe, actually. It's been an ongoing debate for quite a couple of years now. And so I think what is happening as well is in terms of just being able to really define and being very clear in terms of what exactly what this tax will be, what is the mandate of it, what are the, the model that it will take. And I think those are the gaps that currently I see the tax doesn't necessarily define. And so there's a lot of ambiguity. Like, for example, if you already pay VAT, does that mean that you also pay the digital tax, or are you exempted from it? So there's some ambiguity in what is currently happening. And so it means there could be an increase in the tax burden to the people who are doing businesses online. Or it could mean that, if you do that, you do VAT, so if you're not doing VAT, then it's a great idea. So I think being able to be very clear on what are the considerations there and really going to the details of what it covers and what it not. I think what she mentioned in terms of as well, I think the idea of, things like streaming services like Netflix or Showmax or HBO or whatever else you use, we don't necessarily getting revenue from that. So I think definitely it's an opportunity for the government to weigh in on that and be able to take advantage of the user base in Kenya, which I'm sure is very significant in Kenya, to be able to ensure that they can get some revenue out of that, given that, a lot of that money is going out of the country rather than within the market. I think what the considerations, I think when it comes to the technology hub perspective, I think it is important for us to, as you're setting up a digital business, is really thinking about the tax implications and really going to the details of the assessment of that would be, given that now you might have to do double taxation, for example, if you're a non-resident, what does that mean for you if you're doing business in multiple countries? What does that mean? And so it could really be, very significant when you think about if you're driving your business across Africa and you have to pay 1.5% of every country you're present in. That's significant, right? So really thinking about, what is your digitization, your digital monetization plan, your IP, and then being able to see what are the right models for you to be able to drive your business. I think there are already some models that I'm seeing, of course, there's the licensing option, which I think Microsoft normally runs through, but also there's a subscription model as well. And so that also can be taxed as well. So really thinking about what would be the right model for your business to really thrive in this new environment. And I think it's something that I wouldn't say there's a clear answer to it yet. I think everyone is kind of really assessing what will be the clear idea of what that will look like, and then how do we ensure that we can still thrive in that environment. I think the clarity in terms of what exactly that tax will cover, I think will help in terms of being able to know what models do now these new businesses have to take to be able to thrive in this new economy. I think worth mentioning, like for example, in the EU, they proposed this, and I think it's been stalling for a couple of years now because of just not being able to be clear on the definition of what a digital service tax looks like. And is it the number of users? Is it the revenue that you're earning? Is it the subscriptions? Is it the online, the connecting of people in a digital marketplace? And so being able to really be clear on the model, I think would help being clear on the model that you're taking also would be able to be very clear in terms of what are you exposing yourself into, and then as well being able to ensure that you're able to prepare accordingly for the tax implications.
Thank you so much. I think, as you mentioned, there seems to be a lot of ambiguity, but I just want to bring Prof on this one. Prof, what do you think about the digital tax, and how will that affect the digital positioning of Kenya as a technological hub in Africa?
I think it's disastrous to introduce digital tax. Nobody advertised it in Showmax from Kenya here. You need to know the profile who actually utilizes online. And then you see how serious this is. We have been talking about universal access to broadband. Then the government introduces tax to make it expensive and makes broadband for rich people. Someone selling eggs online you are trying to tax them on the same. If you look at people who, we don't know much, but we would come to know people who use Lipa na M-Pesa, which has come to be the best product, which has removed the crime, because people don't have to carry cash, to carry to the comba and they come out with cash and then they are robbed on the way. We are trying to become a digital economy. Then we again tax the very same digital economy. Let me tell you who uses it. If it boils down to the transfer of payments, if you see who uses it at 3 a.m. in the morning are mostly women borrowing from either Fulisa or Branch or Tala to buy goods and sell to buy their children food in the evening. Then you introduce 1.5% tax on the very, very poor. Those are the ones who are using it. Who goes online to read, to study, to change the career because of future of jobs? Is jobless young people who want to get new skills and look for jobs, the current jobs. They are the ones you are taxing. There are very few people who advertise on the big space, and those, it's very easy to isolate them. When you watch YouTube, you actually see there are very few big advertisers, and they actually pay tax. You can get them to pay because you can even have an artificial intelligence solution which tells you who advertised, and you ask the taxes which correspond to such. But let us not discourage people from using internet, which has become essential, which we say it must become a universal, a human right for everybody to have internet, because everything is going to be on internet. Even when you apply for the ID, you apply for the passport, everything. When you pay government for your passport, they will charge you money. Now you are discouraging people from actually using a service. Digital is what was going to give the government money. By buying vegetables from farmers and maintaining the supply chains, you are removing chaos from the streets. Yeah, because people now are paying and getting a logistics firm to drop the food at home. You are paying the farmers, you are making them to be good citizens. Let us allow the space to grow before we rush to taxation. We've been arguing in several research papers that Africa should not rush to taxing digital, because we are just beginning to get into digital space. And then you chase away people who have come so nicely to use the platforms. You get to know them because they are using the system. Now, KRA, which is supposed to use big data to understand how much people would earn, people would stop using that space and the KRA will never see them. So it's counterproductive for government to have introduced a tax in the digital tax. You can say that I'm biased towards human beings having broadband as a human right issue, but that is what was going to help the government understand who has the money and who doesn't have the money from big data. Then you can begin to have strategies around the space, not just introduce it before, just as people are adopting into the technology.
Thank you so much, Prof. I guess then from what I'm hearing, could be it's a time that government then decides on the issue of digital tax to put a cap as to the transaction values to be taxed, because then applying it as a blanket law then will hurt those it's supposed to protect and encourage.
Precisely. See what it did when the president requested that remove any charges for 1,000 and below. And that's where 90% of the businesses are happening. It just improved the businesses. Even after doing that and the learning, whatever, the Minister for Finance goes ahead and puts a tax on the very same thing which was being removed the tax from. Yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose that's a conversation the government needs to start having. Otherwise, it will be counterproductive, as you have mentioned. And maybe engaging on another level of gear. And I want to again bring Winnie, Christine, and Prof on this. And then after this, now we are going to have a session of question and answers. Now, notwithstanding the apparent negative impacts of the new taxes on online businesses, Winnie, what opportunities are available for the Kenyan youth in the digital space? In the wake of realities of COVID-19, you see the loss of jobs, salary cuts, disruptions of physical business merchandises, and other economic disruptions. What practical step can a young person today take to position themselves for the future of work and the future of business?
Thanks, Kelvin. I think, as Prof has said, I think there is opportunity. One, I think the lifelong learning is becoming something that everyone has to do. I'd give an example. Within Microsoft, we have to go through mandatory training every 3 months, meaning that technology is moving at a very fast rate. There's a need for you to keep up with the technologies that are emerging, and also the approaches to market as well. And so being critical in terms of being able to make sure you're abreast with the latest of it I think is important. So if lifelong learning becomes a critical thing that everyone has to embrace as we go into this new age, I think the opportunities are there. I think what we've already been discussing today has been in terms of digital economy. And so in as much as a lot of the other sectors are kind of decreasing in terms of revenue and opportunities, there's a lot of opportunity in the digital sector. And that's not limited to you having technical skills. It's you using the technology as a platform to be able to do what you love and enjoy. And so I think lately you have seen, emerging businesses in any kind of area. I think if you look at Instagram, there's a lot of people who are doing home decor or, different kinds of, food businesses, blogging and stuff like that, that would now generate, increase the user base and being able to advertise online. And unfortunately, we're taxing it, but there are opportunities there as well to really do what you love. And I think the opportunity of moving from industrialization into what the digital economy provides is actually being able to do what you love. So really focusing on what is it that you love, what are you passionate about, what skill set do you have currently, and how do you continuously grow into something that is, can really play a role in the digital economy. I think another thing I would mention is, everyone will need digital skills. Irrespective of who you are, right? From photographers to food bloggers. I think if you look at a lot of our influencers currently within the Kenyan market, you will see there's a lot of redefinition of skills and capabilities of what they can do online. And so that also kind of brings in a new different kind of audience and keeping their followership engaged and ensuring that they're able to continuously be relevant in this new economy. And so making sure that you're always consistently building your capabilities and skill, I think is critical. I think another thing I would mention is, there are many platforms. I think there's LinkedIn Learning, there's in Microsoft, we have Cloud Society, we have Coursera, we have, master classes in different areas. I think YouTube is a really good learning platform. And so really, literally you can Google anything or Bing anything, and you'll be able to find what you need in terms of learning. And so, like the other day I was with my cousin and she's, learning, Asian meals. And so she's following this person who does Asian cooking. And so that's something that she's nurturing. And, now she has a menu on on Instagram. And so it's an interesting way of, doing business and getting orders where people don't want to cook every day. And so it's a simple way of, learning, but it's something that you can really play a role. So there are opportunities. I think also just mentioning what I earlier mentioned in the beginning is, the government as well has provided a whole lot of opportunities. And if you look at what they are doing in terms of the interns that they're hiring in all the different sectors, all of them are ICT to some level. So they're trying to look at, these young people who can bring in digital skills within government or within government projects that can help us accelerate our transformation. I think it's something that also the government is coming to appreciate. So there are opportunities in every area of business, and I think it's us to be able to really be clear on, what are you good at, what are you hoping to do, what do you love, and then really continuously learning to become an expert in that area.
Thank you so much. From what I'm hearing from you is that learning in terms of getting new skills is now accessible to all, and there's no excuse. Things that we would otherwise pay for dearly previously, now we can get them freely. Freely. Enhance multi-skilling and reskilling, which is very critical in this age.
In this age, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, Prof, what are some of the opportunities that the digital space is offering to the young people today that you will encourage them to seek out for?
If you, and those who are listening can do this homework, I'm a teacher, so I have to give a homework. If you go to Google and type data analytics in Kenya, you find almost 5,000 openings. But there are so many young people with degrees walking on the streets without jobs. This is what we call the mismatch. It doesn't mean that, and Winnie can tell you this, it doesn't mean that you needed to have done mathematics to become a data analytics. This is something you go online, within 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you have a certificate from IBM, from MIT, and it's all free, yeah? And you get to do that kind of job. And this is just lack of knowledge. I think the Bible says that my people die because of lack of knowledge. People are looking for jobs, and there are jobs which they can't fill, and these people go abroad to get people to do those jobs. You are going to see more and more jobs like that. What internet has brought to you is that you can switch from having been a history graduate to becoming the best coder in the world. That is what the internet is teaching us, that you can move from that space and create yourself because of what we said, lifelong learning, that you must motivate yourself to change with times. It is not times that needs to change for you to succeed. It is you to change yourself. And by changing yourself, you have the whole world in front of you. And that's why I keep on fighting that we should never have taxes on devices and internet. That's how you enable creativity. People begin to do much more. If you are a creative person, I know I'm not a creative person, but I do go on YouTube and say, today I want to make sun-dried tomatoes. I actually make them from YouTube.
That is true.
To motivate myself, I go to Carrefour to see how much they are selling 100 grams of sun-dried tomatoes. It's 1,000 shillings. So I spend 100 shillings to create something which is 1,000. So I do that because I fear that one day I may be fired, I have nothing to do. I could make sun-dried tomatoes and hawk them around the streets. So you have to allow yourself that you recreate yourself permanently, and for sure that you can do anything to support your family. And if you go to YouTube, it tells you. Even if you went to the supermarket and picked rotten bananas, you can make banana bread from them. That actually go online and say, what do you do with overripe bananas? You will find they will tell you, you would make banana bread. And that would be the best bread ever that you would have made. So it is not a joke about the internet. It is not, those who have understood it have made life out of it. And that's all I'm trying to tell the young people.
Thank you. Indeed, coming from you and I mean, at your age and you're still so psyched up, how much
I'm
more
not 100 years old.
How much more should we be at our age? Thank you so much, Prof. And I just want to ask Christy to share a bit on this also, and whether she has taken an opportunity to make use of the opportunities that are available. Christine, what is your take on this area before we can take a few questions?
Okay, I feel very well now that Prof has motivated us. I feel myself like I haven't taken enough advantage of the internet as it is. But I would say that I think last week or sometime this month, someone was saying how the owner of Amazon is now a trillionaire. I think he's now the richest. He's putting it in other words, you'd fund the entire Kenyan budget with his pocket change and not feel nothing about it. And he's the owner of Amazon. And what is Amazon? Like the richest, most wealthiest companies right now are the digital companies. Like that's how crazy the internet, that's how much you can grow a business from the internet. And I think two things for me that I intend to use and implement even for myself, but also that I've seen people do is that you can save on a lot of your spending costs just by getting ideas from the internet. You can save on costs, even if it's education cost, even if you can save on cost, which again saves you money. Or you can develop a business on the internet, like Amazon, like any digital business really, and that you have everything that you need right on your hands. And the other thing to say also is that the internet in Kenya, using Safaricom, for instance, or any other internet provider, you can basically afford, I think so, you can use very little to gain so much from the internet. The investment that is required of you right now is not as much as you would in building like a company from brick and mortar. It's not the same. So I think that's a thing to note. And yes, I am learning to do that myself as well, but also getting key lessons on from seeing how business like Amazon and LinkedIn and other social media platforms are doing it. And also I think I would like to mention is that I'm involved in a project called Africa Idea Sharing Project, where it's different people from at least all English African speaking countries. And what they do is that they exchange ideas on, especially you find that there's M-Pesa is working in Kenya. It's not the same as how another technology platform is working in Nigeria, for instance. And such exchange of ideas, I think also that works very well. So that's another thing that I would mention, and I would say is an opportunity to just get onto platforms where you meet people in groups that interest you to grow yourself and your ideas of what you can do. And it's very easy to do that right now. Yeah.
Thank you, Christine, for that. And I'm equally very challenged, and I hope all of us are. So what we're going to do right now is just to take a few questions before we can come for one last round of questions, and then we will wind up. So I just want to invite Beryl to just come and guide us into Q&A. There are a couple of people who are raising their hands, and a couple of people who have also shared questions on the chat. So Beryl, if you can hear me, kindly just lead us through Q&A, and then we will wind up after that. Beryl?
Hi everyone. So I'm just going to group this up, starting with Prof. There's a question on Prof, do employers in Kenya really appreciate or recognize the digital certificates that most youth will get from online courses? Or is it not? And also, what's the best advice for youth in terms of choice of jobs and entrepreneurship? And then finally, a question from Magomba on, Prof, what are your thoughts on VAT? Let me just read it out. Prof's opinion on proposed VAT amendment, which shifts the responsibility of compliance check from KRA to taxpayer. Is it practical or is it not practical? Prof, if you can hear me, if you could just
Yes, it is actually not practical.
Answer those questions.
Yeah, it is not practical, because what would happen is there is going to be a lot of disputes. The same thing you are seeing with Keroche Industries and others, that you are the one, the burden of proof is on the taxpayer. And then it's going to raise a lot of corruption, because officers, even when you are clean, they will just be asking stupid questions. We know we are Kenyans, that is what happens. Let them find out, use big data to collect the taxes, and stop putting burdens on. You're already burdened going around with employees, and now you begin to think about KRA. So I think, in my view, there are ways of doing it which are more efficient, which I said, as I said, the more you allow taxpayers to be around the digital footprints, you would be able to get, I think Winnie would support me on that. Then there is the other question, you forget quickly. What was the first one?
Can I jump in there as well, just before you answer
Yeah.
that question? Yeah, I think on the digital certificate, I think even just to reiterate what Microsoft does, we actually, as we are coming slowly into engineering as well, we actually don't care about a degree or a certificate.
Thank you.
We actually care about the skill set. So we want to know, are you good at what you do? And so if you're good at it, if you've never gone to any school but you can be able to, code, then we'll hire you. So it's not about a certificate, actually.
And tell them that you have so many people who never went to college.
Yes.
But they have the skill.
Exactly.
Certificate, it's all nonsense. What people want to see, can you do it?
Can you do it and do it well? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I actually thank you for answering that one.
Prof, the other question was on the youth. How can they maximize on this? The job opportunities.
I answer so many questions from youth, and people have very good educational background, but sometimes they quite don't know how to use it. The job is not the ultimate thing to do. I think they need to have a lot of confidence. I went through the same problem when I came from the US. There were no jobs, so I decided I could sell vegetables. Then the mistake I made is that someone told my mom that I'm selling vegetables in vernacular. It's very bad. So I left to go teach. Yeah, I should have actually remained in that space. I should have had enough confidence to remain in. I would have actually I think I would be a much better person than today. We lack sort of confidence to do certain things, or we do things because of other people. And that's what young people must avoid. And I've been mentoring some who follow, and I ask a question, one who did nutrition, food, and whatever. So I said, this is what everybody wants. Everybody has been wanting to cut weight. They want to know how to use this. Can you do a blog? And Winnie can tell you, these people who do these blogs eventually make a lot of money. Initially, there is no business model that helps, but you need to develop substantial amount of content to get followership. And once you begin to get followership, then you begin to make money. So there is some patience that is required to be able to write. There is nobody who writes about the nutritional foods of Africa. Which foods can we eat and be able to reduce weight or stuff like that. So there are so many others who have done very good areas of study, even in history. There are so many things that can be written. Yeah, but they need constant mentoring. They can begin to exploit what they have at the moment.
Maybe a final round of questions, Beryl, and then we can wind up.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. Christine. Hi, Christine.
Yes, hi.
Oh, I have one question for Christine and then another one for Winnie, and then we can wrap this up. On tax, most of the audience members are saying the tax issue is worrying, but in terms of what sectors does the tax code refer to as digital economy, and how will the tax authority ensure compliance? Or has it been passed directly to consumers and therefore is discouraging use of digital media?
Okay.
And then also, Sarah is saying, over the 1.5% WHT on digital services, do they not have to pay VAT on top of it? And she goes on to explain something. So if you could just do that, and then I'll come in and ask Queenie one more question and then hand over to Keldin.
Okay. So on tax, these tax questions are really not the fun questions. I mean, the questions that everyone else is asking sound like a lot of fun. These tax ones are a headache, but one thing to say is that the digital tax, which was passed in, so there are three things. There are three things we are looking at here. Is the digital tax that was passed through the Finance Act 2019, where it was required that they define, and that's the first question you're asking, like, is there a definition of what is a digital, what's a digital platform? I think that's the first question you ask, like what constitutes digital platforms. So there's a vague definition of what a digital platform is in the Finance Act 2019, and they just simply say, like, the long and short of it, it's a platform where buyers interact with sellers, and when that is said, it means, so is the question, and this is, it's a platform where buyers will interact with sellers. So the thing you ask is that if I, as a seller of, let's say, shoes, I go and advertise on Facebook, I'm a seller interacting with buyers. So does that mean that digital tax will apply to me? And then also the other question is, there's another person who has their own platform. Let's say this platform is not an advertising platform, but let's say what they do is, or like what you're speaking about, a blog. I have a blog where what I'm doing is that I'm blogging on decor. And that's what I am doing. I'm interacting. It's like I have content which is interacting with other people and they're making use of it. Is that a platform that's going to be taxed? And then let's say I have a YouTube channel. And my YouTube channel, I can make income, because on YouTube, the minute you hit a certain number of viewers or subscribers, you can make income out of it. So if it's YouTube and I have my own YouTube channel, and what I'm doing on YouTube is that I'm maybe showing how to dance, an African dance style, and then I get 1,000 subscribers and I start making income on YouTube. So again, I'm not, So what I'm saying is that there's a definition that has been provided on what possibly could be brought under the digital tax, but they say they will issue regulations, that the cabinet minister for finance should issue regulations. A lot, like what Winnie was saying, a lot of thought needs to be put in on what that means. Because if that means is that a blogger who is blogging on nutrition is going to be taxed because they're interacting with their content, then that really stifles innovation and discourages people. Then the other thing is about the promotional tax. That one is targeted at non-resident people. And it's going to be, that one is for non-residents. When you're paying a non-resident person for marketing and promotional services, the promotional services tax, that you're supposed, that they're applying 20% withholding tax, but that's only for non-resident persons. Now, the other one that now is going to apply, it's the digital services tax, which is the one proposed in the Finance Bill 2020, which is the 1.5% of the gross amount that you're paying for the service that you've received. And ideally, how this works, how this works is that on the digital services tax is that, let's say I've received a service on, let's say it's, maybe it's, let's say even use eCitizen. Let's assume eCitizen is a third-party platform, not a government platform. Then I go apply for a certificate on, maybe for a birth certificate on eCitizen. What the government is saying is that you've received a service on eCitizen. When you're paying that eCitizen for the service you've received, you should withhold 1.5% of tax for that service. So that's a general idea that they're having, that you're receiving a service. When you're paying for that service, withhold 1.5% of the gross value of that of the amount that you're paying. So again, that's also not that's also quite unclear. You can get, as long as you're the one who is offering the service, you'll be caught under that tax. As long as you're the one who is paying for that service, point is that if you're appointed by the KRA as a withholding agent for the digital services tax, then you need to withhold tax. And the problem is that normally on withholding taxes, if you pay and you don't withhold tax, you're the one who will pay a penalty for it. So let's say you paid and you never withheld tax on it, then you'd be liable for penalties. So I mean, the tax thing is a bit, everyone would need to be careful about it. And the other thing also, the other question that was asked about VAT is that the digital tax will affect both corporate tax and VAT. And how it's working is that as long as, if you qualify as a person who should be subject to digital tax on the platform thing, like let's say you're marketing shoes on Facebook, if you qualify as that, you're likely to be caught under both corporate tax and VAT. Only that the implications will vary as to who is going to bear the liability. So it's really going to be, because if it's VAT, it means that every person who is buying shoes on your platform now, does that mean that you start accounting for VAT on it? Or there's a lot of thought that needs to be put in those regulations that the cabinet secretary is supposed to issue. But I agree completely that tax right now, maybe the Kenyan economy is not mature enough to start trying to tax this. And especially if we are trying to grow the knowledge economy in Kenya, the knowledge and the creative economy, which is what other markets are able to get a lot of income from. But as it is right now, it may not be the best point, but the government, I think, is just it's really trying to win. It's trying to win by making, get the low-hanging fruits. And this is a really low-hanging fruit, and that they're trying to take advantage of that. But yeah, I hope I've answered it.
Yes, you have. Thank you so much, Christine. Winnie, 2 questions. Emmanuel is asking on multi-level marketing companies, like what are your thoughts? I think you'll pair it up with cryptocurrency that is currently banned in the country as suggested. And also from Enoch, with the advent of Facebook Pay, where users of IG, WhatsApp, and Facebook shall be able to make payment on the social sites, does the Kenyan law envision how to treat its operation in the Kenyan economy? or as we suggest, we will be at the mercy of Safaricom in opposing it and heavy tasks from the government grid. So Winnie, if you could just tackle those two things, and then we'll have Boniface ask a question. He has been raising his hand for too long. So Winnie, to you.
Okay. Can I differ
I know
my...
I'm throwing you in the deep end, but
yeah,
I can only
defer
imagine.
the cryptocurrency one to the expert in the room, which is Ndemo. So
Yes,
I'll allow him to answer that.
Prof, if you can hear me, please, once Winnie has answered, please just come in with the cryptocurrency discussion. So Winnie, back to you.
On the WhatsApp Pay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one is an interesting one. I think the same way I think we went through the whole experience of M-Pesa, and these are just my thoughts, where we're trying to figure out, is it a financial, it's not a bank, it's a telco. How do we regulate that? How do we pay tax? Impose tax on them? And I think it will be kind of similar as well in this case. And I would assume that yes, maybe Safaricom might have their reservations, given that it might be an easier, better experience compared to M-Pesa. But I think right now it's speculative in terms of what could happen, given that, yes, in India and in Brazil, they are launching, but those markets are quite different from what we are doing here in Kenya because of M-Pesa. And so I would say it's something to definitely look out for, but I think I would say, like, for example, from the experience of, having like a business account and being able to interact on WhatsApp, if the payment option is also there, I think it will make a very seamless opportunity. The opportunity could be that, sorry, getting an echo. M-Pesa, works with WhatsApp to be able to integrate that as well. So, and I know there has been conversations as well to be able to do that. So I'm really looking to see how they launch into the Kenyan market. But for now, I don't have like very strong opinions on how things will go.
So
thank you, Winnie. Prof, cryptocurrency and multi-level marketing companies, please.
Cryptocurrency is not banned in Kenya. I think what the governor did is the caution he gave that you are on your own, we're not regulating this. And what you must know that in the next 5 years, you like it or you don't like it, most currencies would go crypto. Already China has rolled out their the cryptocurrency. US, which was opposed to it earlier, is moving towards crypto. If you understand crypto, if you have used the Bonga points, you are actually transacting in crypto because it's not the shilling, but it is a representation of a payment mode. So cryptocurrency is going to, you better just learn from now how that's why every government wants to start a national digital learning program so that people begin to understand the future. It is very expensive to print cash. What? Someone is annoyed.
Sorry about that.
Yes. It is very expensive to print cash, and the cash is a carrier of disease. That's what the president said. We minimize use of cash and the use of digital transactions. So you are not going to avoid digitalization of currencies across the world. That is happening. It's already happened. It is going to happen. So you just prepare your mind that it's going to happen. You need to understand how it would function. So refusing is just a delay of whatever it is. I am not a marketer to talk about multi-level marketing. I think, Geraldine, you can answer that.
Neither am I, but I think what we will do, because we have another session on digital business and technology next month, where we will talk about mostly why is it that Africa is slow in terms of tech startups, and why is it that if it has to succeed, then some partnership has to be done with those in the West, and so on and so forth. And I think at that level we'll be able to discuss. So I think Beryl, thanks for guiding us through the question and answer. We are 1 minute past time, and I just wanted to ask us that at this point we move towards winding up. And I want to thank our panelists so much. And maybe just before we can close, I want to give each one a minute to just give us a final thoughts as to what their final comments will be to the participants that are listening today. So I want to start with Christine.
Keldin,
sorry?
I'm sorry, Keldin, just before they give their final thoughts, because Boniface had raised his hand for a very long time, if we could give him 5 seconds to just ask a question before we get the final thoughts from the panelists.
Fair enough. Boniface, kindly unmute, and maybe you can ask your question. Boniface, are you there? Okay, I think Boniface is facing challenges. Okay, I think he's facing challenges, so I think we'll just proceed, and maybe we can reach out offline. So, Christine, what will be your final thoughts on the session today, and your parting shot?
Okay, I think this I liked being part of this session. I think having more of such sessions, you get one free thoughts and advice on tax, on investment for no pay. So it's a good idea to keep having them. But also, especially now that for the biggest, I think, part I was supposed to contribute on was on tax. I think it's good to keep yourself informed, especially on the tax developments that are likely to be taking place. And the government, I mean, to be honest, I think from what I've seen, like the government on one hand have the conference where it says to help caution you from the COVID-19 situation, you'll do away with the taxation of the lower bracket people. We will do that. And then when the when the Tax Law Amendments Act is passed, they pass in so many other measures, which if you are not aware, you'd think you got such an advantage from what the government did, but there's so much that they took away. It was giving with one hand and taking everything else with the other hand. So I think it's to keep yourself informed, especially if you're in the business world or if you're looking to venture into that. It's important to keep yourself like aware of all the changes that are happening, and especially now with the digital tax, you've had quite a bit of what the government is thinking about. Just keep your ears on the ground to know like what's happening, and so that you know how to to be strategic in your decisions as well, what you're going to do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Christine. I want to bring in Winnie for final comments. Winnie?
Yeah, thank you again for having me. I think it was a pleasure to be part of the panel, and really enjoyed the discussion. I think for me is the future is in your hands. There's a lot of content, information, and even access to people who, like, for example, Professor Ndemo here, who you would never be able to, easily get on a face-to-face meeting, but you do have access to him currently. So you have access to people, resources, but also and advice that you would not have previously been able to. So I think really taking advantage of that, shifting with the time so that you're able to continuously be relevant in the economy and being able to continuously have a livelihood, but more so as well, do what you love as well. I think there's a passion, there's an opportunity now, not like before where you had to either be an accountant, clerk, or something that you don't necessarily enjoy, but you had to do because that was what the economy provided. But I think in this new economy, everyone can be what they want to be. If you have the patience and the resilience to be able to build a customer base and be able to, do what it is that you love, I think there's an opportunity to be successful. And so I know, like, look at the Bezos of now and Facebook, all of them started very small in their cubicles, with very small resources as well. But now they are, they're the ones who are, are driving the economies of our time. So there is opportunity, and there's continuously will be opportunity for us to be able to redefine ourselves. And I think more than anything now, because Kenya is also, I think because of COVID and everything, I think it's also, there are also emerging opportunities as well. There's a whole Build Kenya initiatives as well. And I think I've been very much conscious on buying local products, because at least the money keeps going round into our economy rather than taking it outside. And so being able to as well be innovative and support our local economy, I think is as well critical in this particular time. So, which is also really forcing us to really think out of the box in terms of what we can do for ourselves. So there's a lot of opportunity in the market to be able to redefine yourself, but also to, create new things, irrespective of how the economy looks like currently.
Thank you so much, Winnie, for that, for those invaluable pieces of advice. Prof, maybe your final comments on this?
For me, just to thank you for inviting me. Although I was squeezed up, I kept on shifting timing because I had another webinar. I pushed another one a little bit, but it's a very interesting opportunity to share with mostly young people. There is a lot to share, and it's through sharing that knowledge passes from one to the other. And I hope you can continue with this, and hopefully the future topics don't focus on things that are youth. I think it's a bit selfish because of the emerging studies that the younger generation, after the parents have invested in them, they don't look to parents. We need to know why, because my earlier session was about that, and they're asking, why should I look after them? So there's a lot of entitlement which we must deal with, because in the African society, we invest everything in you so that you pay back when we are not able to work. I hope we can have such discussions in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. And that is noted. That's a very positive feedback given there. And we will indeed strive to balance this so that it's more intergenerational and it cuts across. Otherwise, I want to thank all our panelists for sparing their time to be with us. I want to thank Win. Let me start with Christine. Thank you, Christine. Christine is joining us from South Africa, where she is currently. Christine is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya and also a tax advisor, but she just finalized also her studies in commercial law, LLM masters at University of Cape Town, and so she's still in South Africa. Thanks, Winnie, a lot for sparing time to be with us this evening and for sharing your mind with all of us. Winnie is AI Country Plan Program Manager at Microsoft. She's also an advisory board member of AidHub. She's also regional voice lead at Impact 2030. So thank you so much, Winnie, for sparing your time. Prof, we were honored by your presence this evening, and we have shared much. I've invited Prof in a couple of forums, and he has always found time to come and share. And I want to thank you for that. Many of us look up to you, and we are honored to have you this evening, and may God bless you. To our participants, we want to thank you so much for sparing your time, both those who are joining us on Zoom and on YouTube. We thank you for participating and for taking your time to join us. Please find time also to join us next month, early next month. We will let you know. And the focus will be, we'll try to understand why tech startups are slow in Africa and what is happening and what we can do differently, and why African youth are not so keen at tech startups, yet this is where the world is going. So I want to thank all of us for being with us up to this point, and I want to invite Beryl to close with us by inviting someone to pray. Beryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Keldin, we'd also like to thank you for moderating the session. So thank you very much. And you're smiling, thank you very much. Winnie, thank you very much. Christine, we were honored to have you. And Prof, it is always a pleasure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, quick one. I'm trying to just send everyone a message on giving us your feedback, because we appreciate feedback and we would like to know how we can improve these sessions, and also if there are any topics that you'd like us to discuss. I see cryptocurrency is something that everyone is asking about, mainly because most people are saying that they don't know what it is. Our next session will be on 2nd July as suggested by Keldin, and we are just going to talk about tech startups. We'll have a panel expert team to tackle that. So Dolly Mishira, if you can hear me, please pray with us as we wrap up this session. Dolly?
Sure. Okay. Let's all humble ourselves as we pray. Dear Lord God, our Father and friend, we come in your presence this wonderful evening. We thank you so much for the rich discussion that we've had. We thank you so much for the wonderful brains that you've put on this app. And we thank you so much for the eloquence with which they've delivered the different thoughts and insights. How we pray that, Lord, as we continue to navigate all our worldly obligations, may we also learn to be good Christians, that you will navigate them with a spirit of honesty, a spirit of truth, and a spirit that is guided and led by your will, by which we should live, oh dear Lord. Thank you so much for the organizers of the session. Thank you so much for the panelists as well, who've taken and given of their time to have us here. We pray that, Lord, you may help the organizers as they also plan for the next session, that, Lord, your wisdom may lead them. Take care of us in all our different endeavors and all the different contexts within which we are operating from. Those that are jobless, please, Lord, mind them and protect them and provide for them and help them get good placements that also help them meet their purposes in life. And those that are employed, we also pray that, Lord, you may help them be the best and most integrity-led Christians at their workplaces, that they, Lord, they may live and show you in everything that they do. May your will be done in our lives, O Lord, and may you keep loving us. It's my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you and good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Good night. Jojo, you've seen my comment?
Yes, I have. Thank you very much.
Say again.
Yes, good night, George.
Bye.
Yeah. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Owande, please stop the recording.
It has stopped already.
Okay. So I can now throw words.
Onuko,
No.
what do you want to say?
Onuko, what do you want to throw? Words, of course.
Should we be having another thing to be thrown? Kindly bring it to my attention. We also throw stones.
Did you hear that we also throw stones?
putting soap. Say good night. Oh, you.
Tuite hiyo gini malich manade.